Hello, my name is Peter Michael Zorick, and I was born in April of 1947. And during the time when I was born, I was supposed to have been born in July, but since I was born in April, I weighed less than 3 pounds. During those days, the doctors were overdosing the babies with too much oxygen in the incubator, and during that time, I lost my eyesight, so I've never seen. So the moral was they didn't correct the problem till 1954, a doctor in England, so that problem doesn't occur very often anymore. But it happened to me. And I grew up in the state of Connecticut, and when I was in the 6th grade, I started wrestling in a tournament. It was called the Junior Midget Tournament, and it was a 70 to 79 pound class. And I won the weight class, and I was very interested in wrestling. Well, there aren't very many blind champion wrestlers. A lot of the schools for the blind at that time had wrestling programs, and some of them were really good, but for the most part, there weren't that many champion blind wrestlers, but I wanted to be one of them. So when I was in the 9th grade, I had a track coach. He wanted me to run the 2-mile event with a partner. And the partner couldn't run it by himself. That was the rules. That I went to the School for the Blind in Connecticut, the Oak Hill School for the Blind. So he said, if you start running, it'll help your wrestling. It'll help keep your weight down for wrestling. Well, I was willing to do anything to be a better wrestler. I wrestled in high school, and most of the time I wrestled 112. In our school, we were able to wrestle varsity in the 7th grade because we had such a small team. Well, in the 7th grade, I was too small. The lowest weight class was 95, and my reading skills aren't very good, so I stayed back in the 9th grade, and I had an extra year of wrestling as a result. So I wrestled 112 for 4 years. And to go to college, I was thinking, well, they had a 115-pound class at that time that I wanted to compete in. But the schools in Connecticut, their lowest weight class was 123. I didn't want to wrestle 123. I had an uncle that lived in Los Angeles, and he was my father's brother. He lived near UCLA. UCLA had a 115-pound class. So in September of 1968, I moved to California and got on a wrestling team in college. And I won many awards in wrestling, placed 10 times in the Nationals, and I was the only blind wrestler there. 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman. And it's just, wrestling was in my blood. I couldn't, and a lot of people told me, oh, well, you could wrestle against blind wrestlers, and that's what the Junior Midget Tournament was. But you can't compete against sighted wrestlers. And when people would tell me that, I would work harder. It would charge me up. Well, I'm going to prove these people wrong. So it actually, people didn't know if I could do it or not, but the fact that they were telling me I couldn't made me work harder to prove them wrong. And I did prove them wrong. And as I got into college, and I met a lot of people, and people told me that I should write a book because I had so many funny stories and interesting things that happened to me. And I'm a real sports nut. And my goals in life were to teach music or play music. So I've done 18 solo classical piano concerts. I've been playing the piano for more than 50 years. And to coach wrestling, which I got to do. And one thing I'd like to do someday is be a sports talk show host on the radio. I really know my sports. I always make predictions in the football and basketball. I picked the winner of the college basketball last year. I usually do pretty good with my predictions in football and basketball, baseball. I had the Dodgers in the World Series this year. Today is October 12th, so the World Series hasn't started. And I had Denver and San Francisco in the 2014 Super Bowl. And Denver, they're both looking pretty good. And the NBA season, which starts October 29th, I'm picking Miami and Houston in the finals. And a lot of times I'll pick who's going to make the playoffs, the top 8 teams or the top 5 teams, or depending on the sport, how many teams are there. So I'm just a real sports nut. So that would be an interesting thing to do someday, to be a sports talk show host. Getting back to my book, I failed all my writing courses. So how am I going to do this? Even if these people are right, how am I going to do this if I failed all my writing courses? So time progressed, and more people were telling me to write a book. And one night in 1991, when I was 44, a voice woke me up at 4 in the morning. Well, I don't like to get up early in the morning. I like to get up late and sleep and go to bed late. It's always been, my body clock seems to be staying up late at night. And a lot of races they had in wrestling, I was always concerned about them, because sometimes you have a 7 o'clock in the morning weigh-ins, and you have to run races at 8 in the morning, and I said, gee, I can't even wake up. How am I going to run a race? But anyway, finally, a voice woke me up at 4 in the morning and told me to write a book. Well, how am I going to do that? I failed all my writing courses. Well, I started making tapes of things that I remembered from my childhood and up to the present time, and then I started writing them down. I did my book. First I did it on a manual typewriter, which I still use for my letters. And so I had a friend named Willa, and I didn't know what the title should be. I didn't have a clue. She said, well, why don't you call it Making Weight? Because you're always talking about making weight for wrestling tournaments. And okay, I'll call it Making Weight. So in the meantime, people started questioning, well, what does making weight mean? People would ask, is this a diet book? Well, if this is a diet book, I'm failing miserably, because I'm about 60 pounds more than my old wrestling weight. So no, the answer to that is not a diet book. Making weight. Making means to create. How much weight do you have to gain? Don't I wish? Making weight does not mean gaining weight. It's not creating. The term making weight, the way I see it, means if you are tested and you pass the test, and somebody says, well, how did you do on the test? Well, I made it. So for boxers and wrestlers and jockeys, making weight, the term means being at a certain weight. You set a goal at what weight you want to be, and being at that weight on a given day when the dual meet is held, or the tournament, which my weight was 114. That was the weight I wanted to be for nationals and California state tournaments, which I won most of my awards in that weight class. I have won some awards in other weight classes, but mainly 114 or 112 when I was in high school. So that's the term making weight. Now, one of my interests is also music that I mentioned. Well, my music came about, I started early, and the way I learn is I get my music taped one hand at a time, separately. And I learn my music that way. People who are very good at reading, there is Braille music. It's not like there isn't Braille music. There is Braille music for people who are better readers than I am. I have a close friend who is very good at reading Braille music and has also done a lot of concerts. And I don't know if there's anything that's too hard for him to play. His name is John Granite. He lives in Palm Springs, which is about 25 miles from where I live. And he became blind the same way I did, with too much oxygen in the incubator, and he's a couple years older than I am. So people ask me, why did you do this? Well, when I get up in the morning, I always feel like, I wonder if there's somebody out there that I could help. And so I like to inspire people. I speak at schools, speak to kids. I get a lot of letters. I got more than 1,000 letters from kids talking about how they liked my visit and it inspired them to do better, inspired them to reach their goals and not to give up. And that's one of my goals with this book, to prevent people from giving up and getting discouraged. I know I've gotten discouraged many times at certain things, but you try to go on, or if you get into slumps, you got to keep on going and you just don't give up. And probably one of the hardest things for me was not only the discouraging things, people saying that I couldn't do it, sometimes they would deny me the opportunity because my field is so, there are so few blind people in what I do, what I like to do, that they just make up their mind that I can't do it and don't give me the opportunity to find out if I could do it or not. One example was when I was living in the state of Connecticut, and I was ranked number 2 in the state. And they would not allow me to compete in their state tournament because I had 3 blind opponents during the course of the season, and they said that my competition wasn't good enough to compete in the state tournament. So I did wrestle the guy who was number 1 in the state, and I was ranked number 2, and some of the guys that I beat did do well in the state tournament. So it's things like this that kind of hold me back, and people just don't know what I could do. And I've had more trouble with finding employment that way than even wrestling. People will just determine that I can't do it and not give me the chance. And that's why I don't have a very long worksheet. But I did coach wrestling for a while, and I still would be interested in the sports talk show thing. And so in wrapping up, there are people I need to thank. My great friend and caregiver, Nancy Noble, who did the wrestling drawings. There are photos and wrestling drawings in the book. And people who put the book on the computer. I know that if I wanted to update something, or if I wanted something in 1963, if I was going to do it on the typewriter, I would have to go all the way back to 1963 and retype everything from there. But on the computer, I could just type it in. Well, I want this between these two articles, the end of 1963 and the beginning of 1964, and I could get it. Somebody could put it in the right place, not me. On this, the funny thing about making weight, it's just so funny to think of some of the experiences I had. And the funniest thing for me, when they talk about how much I have to gain and all that, gaining weight is as easy as breathing. And it's so easy to gain and so hard to lose. And when I do make weight, it's the opposite extreme, because I'm always hungry and you got to starve yourself and all this stuff to make weight. It depends how bad you want to win. So I always get a kick out of it when people ask me how much I have to gain, because gaining is so easy and losing is so hard. So the reason I wrote the book, I can't go into all the reasons. I wanted to make the world a better place, and it is good for people who like the underdogs, for people who like a good human interest, inspirational story like that. In closing, on the why right situation, I could just go into a little bit, but like making the world a better place. But why right is one of the chapters in the book. So, and there are a lot of answers to questions you might have about why I wrote it are in that chapter. So I don't see any reason why I should answer that question. So I just thank everybody who helped me, my readers, my running partners. I have to run with a partner since I can't see. My wrestling opponents, my training partners, people who read for me, people who helped me get through college, and my parents, and my family, my brother. A variety of people who, without their help, I couldn't have accomplished the things I have. And on those notes, I will sign off. This is Mike Zorick. Goodbye.